The Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress would like to thank our trustee, Mr. Robert Day, for his generous support. The American experiment. The phrase itself has become such a part of our lexicon that it is easy to forget the powerful premise contained in this concept of an experiment. America is a test of whether people from every corner of the globe and from every ideological persuasion could come together and stay together around a set of ideas. From the beginning, forging one country from such divergent groups and so many varied perspectives required a whole new level of cooperation and respect for one another. It has not always been easy, and at times the divisions have grown so great it seemed as if the nation would break in two. One time, it actually did. But from the very beginning, the hallmark of the American Republic has been our ability to compromise, to look past our divisions, and to think together to confront the challenges facing our nation. To the extent we have successfully come together as one people, we have thrived. And when we turned against one another, America faltered. With an ever-growing series of threats and challenges to our nation, never has it been more important to the future of the Republic that we have leaders willing to rise to higher ground and find common solutions.
We face a very challenging world. We face a world where international threats from terrorism to reemergence of countries like Russia and an emerging China pose international threats. We face a world that is increasingly driven by technology, which offers great things, but also offers dramatic changes in the workforce. We're facing, on a national basis, increasing amounts of national debt. $18 trillion in national debt at this point. That means when interest rates go up a single 1%, that adds $120 billion a year right off the top. And the only way we're going to get that issue solved, or the issue of how we grow jobs in this new economy, or make sure America remains the strongest nation in the world, is by having people who are willing occasionally to check their Republican and Democratic hats and recognize it's time to put our country first.
Far too often to Washington, people are going there programmed to fight, to feud, to raise money, to go on cable shows, to demonize the opposition, and they lose total sight of the need for service in the future.
There's this notion that we're not in this together, and we're not going to help you, and we're going to hurt you, and somehow the national agenda and what's good for the public is being lost in all of this.
We need, frankly, leaders who can focus on the things that unite us instead of those that divide us.
You've got to go into it with a very intentional strategy about how to pull people together.
You need to be able to give and take, to say, okay, I'm stood on my principles, now we're going to get a result.
And we need leaders who are willing to say, I'm willing to work with a Republican, I'm willing to work with a Democrat to find a solution. Just because they're in an opposite party doesn't mean that we can't work together.
It is in this spirit of cooperation, reconciliation, grace, and civility that the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress presents its highest honor, the PUBLIUS Awards. The awards find their roots in the very foundation of our country, when James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay, three independently minded men, came together to author the Federalist Papers under the shared pseudonym of PUBLIUS. The Federalist Papers proved instrumental in the effort to bring people together to gain support for the ratification of the Constitution.
In writing the Federalist Papers, they were able to bring together divergent views, bring together partisan leaders in a way that allowed this country to be established and to be founded. So at a time where we think that our challenges in Washington are too great to overcome, that there's no civility, that there's no hope for compromise and bipartisanship, I think the PUBLIUS Award and the Federalist Papers reminds us we can take these challenges on and we can do it together.
So tonight, we pause to celebrate two men who are doing it right. Two men just beginning their public service in a new spirit of bipartisanship that represents the best in the American character, and a tradition of grace and civility our nation must recapture.
The reality is, nothing will get done unless you have men and women of goodwill who are practical, who believe in public service. And that's why governors, including the two governors tonight, are so important to our country. They have to manage things. They have to be practical. They have to get things done. It's no longer time for talk. It's time for action. And we have two governors tonight who are very deserving of honor in that regard.
By 2008, as the entire country plunged into the depths of economic collapse, it was clear that the state of Michigan was in trouble. Having entered the recession many years before the rest of the country, and with its lifeblood automobile industry in a state of depression, it was clear that a new type of leader was required to help rebuild this once proud state. In the 2010 statewide election, Rick Snyder ran as a political outsider with the business sense to help turn Michigan around. He challenged a long list of deeply entrenched political leaders, but was able to win the Republican primary with a non-traditional campaign featuring Snyder claiming that it was time for a nerd to lead Michigan. In January 2011, Snyder took the reins as the first CPA in Michigan history to serve as governor. In a state with an ailing business climate, a devastating public budget crisis, and a major city on the brink of bankruptcy, his leadership proved to be exactly what the state of Michigan needed.
Governor Snyder was elected in 2010, and he followed 8 years of drifting, and that can put any state at risk. You need to understand he's first and foremost a guy who comes from the business world. He's coming in to do this job. He's the CEO of Michigan, and so he wants to improve things. He wants to leave the state of Michigan, the body politic, better than when he found it.
I think what's been extraordinary about Governor Snyder is at a time when Michigan, and specifically Detroit, has been up against a wall where people thought that these were issues and differences that could not be reconciled. I mean, he has fought hard to overcome these in a very bipartisan, frankly nonpartisan way.
I like what he did in dealing with Canada over the new bridge between Detroit and Windsor. That had been stalled. The legislature of Michigan refused to deal with it. Rick Snyder stepped up to the plate and handled it. So I admire that. I admire the fact that he stepped up to the plate and decided to take up the federal program to expand Medicaid. His adopting the federal program on expanding Medicaid health care for the poor caused the element in his party to challenge the lieutenant governor at the state convention for reasons that have nothing to do with the merits at all. So I admire that.
It's the definition of leadership. It's the ability to lead, and you can't lead with merely one group of people. You can't say, here are my supporters and we're in charge and the rest of you are along for the ride. You better build some consensus and support. I don't think it's leadership to stake out a position and say it's my way or the highway, because oftentimes the people you're dealing with say, fine, take the highway, get out of here.
Snyder has been quick to reach across the aisle to find common-sense solutions to Michigan's most pressing challenges. He has worked with members of both parties to launch an effort to revitalize Michigan's economy. He tapped the former Democratic Speaker of the House as his Treasury Secretary and crossed party lines to support Democratic plans to help rescue the auto industry. Facing a legacy of financial mismanagement and economic collapse, Snyder oversaw the financial emergency and bankruptcy of Detroit, working with both Democratic and Republican leaders to stabilize and rebuild their great city. Today, Detroit is already showing signs of its reemergence as a beacon of hope for 21st century America.
He took on a very difficult issue, which is the bankruptcy of Detroit. That was a real minefield, and he saw it through, and he's worked well with the Democratic mayor of Detroit, Mike Duggan. They have a good working partnership, and I think that's important to say, because that I think gives Detroit a much brighter future than we all thought we would have.
Governor Snyder's hard work over the last few years is starting to be recognized nationally. I think people realize that Detroit, which a few years ago was a worst case scenario and a bad lesson, is now becoming a good one of how you take a bad situation and find opportunity in that. And I think there's some really good lessons coming out of Michigan that other state and local leaders should be looking at.
From its earliest days, Virginia has always been a little different. As the first official colony, Virginia natives are quick to point out that America began at Cape Henry and Jamestown. Virginia was home to the greatest of revolutionary leaders, and it was Virginia minds that gave us the great documents forming the core of this new nation called the United States. So it would seem unlikely that a state like Virginia, with such long and proud traditions, would open its arms to a native New Yorker and join hands with him to help foster the new Virginia. But that's exactly what they did in November 2013, when the people of Virginia elected Syracuse, New York native Terry McAuliffe as their 72nd governor.
I think he's going to go down in history as one of Virginia's finest governors. As you know, we have been very proud of our governors. We never fail to mention the leadership of Thomas Jefferson all the way through most of the 20th century. We've had some wonderful people, but Terry McAuliffe really, given the kind of partisan opposition that he could have faced, he's found a way to work with his legislature that is overwhelmingly Republican, and yet he has found issues where the legislature is willing to work with the governor.
As someone who, like myself, moved into Virginia as an adult, he had to earn his stripes. He was not successful his first time running for governor, came back and ran again, learned from that first time, was successful in his election. And then I think there were concerns, would he make sure that he brought in a true Virginia administration? And he has been 100% committed to Virginia, to building out a new Virginia economy, for being willing to talk about the issues that are hard.
You know, it's interesting, if you were doing this award ceremony and you said, I'm giving an award to a Democratic governor, Republican governor in Michigan, Virginia, they would have thought the Democrat was in Michigan and the Republican was in Virginia. It's opposite, and it's somewhat opposite because Virginia is not only a really interesting state right now, but it's politically changing a good bit. That is a very purple state, you know, it's not blue, it's not red, and there are more independents than either Democrats or Republicans. And he's got to work with 2 Republican houses, so you've got to go into it with a very intentional strategy about how to pull people together.
Having just completed his first full year in office, Governor Terry McAuliffe continues to surprise traditional opponents by forging unique bipartisan solutions with a broad range of political leaders. In doing so, Governor McAuliffe is transforming Virginia with a skillful hand and the grace and civility required to lead such a politically diverse state. Many had questions in the beginning. How would a former Democratic Party national chairman effectively work beyond party lines with a predominantly Republican state house in a very politically divided state?
Governor McAuliffe, who, as we know, has a background in politics and used to be head of the DNC, and I think among some circles would be seen as a partisan leader, but that's frankly not true. I mean, he has reached across party lines in Richmond and has done an extraordinary job of working with Republican and Democratic leaders at a time where Virginia has been really focused on economic growth.
In Virginia, you're the governor for all 8+ million Virginians, Democrat, Republican, Independent, wherever in the state, whether they voted for you or they didn't. That's how he views the office. You know, he's been nothing but a happy warrior Democrat his whole life, but once he's in, he knows I got 2 Republican legislatures, I got a state that is truly a purple state, so I've got to figure out ways always to be reaching out and working together.
Terry has a deserved reputation for his love of partisan politics and his enthusiasm. But I do think that in the long run, his reputation is going to be built upon his ability to govern, to work in a nonpartisan way in pursuit of the common good. That's the kind of leader that Terry McAuliffe has proven himself to be.
when fiscal policies in Washington resulted in sharp budget cuts and sequestration, McAuliffe recognized an opportunity to transform the economy of the Commonwealth. He pursued bipartisan policies designed to strengthen Virginia's economic foundation, attract private sector investment, and make the Commonwealth less reliant on government spending, building what he calls a new Virginia economy. And as Virginia has faced its own budgetary challenges, he has worked closely with the Republican-led state legislature to find bipartisan solutions to fill budget shortfalls and ensure Virginia's long-term financial stability.
And as we've gone through some challenges in sequestration and other budget cuts, it's hit Virginia more than it's hit other states. And one of the challenges that Terry has talked about again and again is, hey, we've got to really diversify our economy. We lean a little bit too heavily on the federal side because of our proximity to Washington, but we have to take some of the brain power that we have because of Washington and because of some of our military bases and find new strategies and new economic development tools. And that's something that he's right about and that he is doing a really good job in pulling together other legislators to help him achieve that.
Today, Virginia has become an inspiration to the remaining states in the Union. But these accomplishments are only the beginning, and Governor McAuliffe's commitment to continue to rise above can best be summed up in his own words. He said, "It is that spirit of recognizing we share one Commonwealth that has guided my administration during this past year and will continue to guide us as we spend the coming years fulfilling the responsibilities entrusted by the people of Virginia." With a similar call to higher ground in mind, the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress is proud to recognize the leaders of two states that have been at the forefront of American political and industrial progress. Two governors who, in many ways, stand at the very beginning of their own political careers, but who have already served as a model for the rest of the country, for their willingness to seek and nurture ideas and solutions from all sides of the great political divide. It is in this spirit, and on behalf of a grateful nation, that the Center for the Study of the Presidency and Congress presents the 2015 Publius Awards to Governor Rick Snyder of Michigan and Governor Terry McAuliffe of Virginia.